Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. If you're new around here, hi, my name is Anna, and today I want to show you how I set up my reading journal for 2025. So in this video, we're going through all the pages at the beginning of my journal that I'll use for the whole year, and I'll also share my current TBR list and talk about some books I'm the most excited about at the moment. I decided to just continue in my old reading journal because I still have a bunch of it left. I think I can use it for at least one more year. This is from Notebook Therapy's Love Lock collection, which was sent to me for free a while ago. And I think that the neutral ivory color suits a reading journal perfectly. But anyway, you can see that I flipped to the next empty spread in my journal after the last book spread from last year. And this is where I wanted to set up a simple cover spread just to make a clear division for this year. We will also add yearly side tabs that will make it even easier to find this point. In my previous 2024 reading journal flip through video, I mentioned that I felt like some of my pages were a little bit too busy, so I wanted to really try to create more minimal spreads this time. I also had quite a few of them to set up and didn't want this to take forever, so that was my mindset going into these pages, and we can judge how well I managed with that later. I printed out this sheet with a few things I'll use in this setup, and I needed the big numbers on this cover spread. I'll add this full sheet to the free section of my shop so you can download it as well, and there's a bunch of other stuff for scrapbooking too, so I hope you will get some use out of them. The link is in the description, and I also want to mention that if I don't mention a specific product I'm using, it will also be linked in the description. So all the information will be down there. I don't know what compelled me to use the biggest picture I could find on this spread, but that's what we're going with, and I tried to add some other minimal decorations around the yearly title in the middle. I also wanted to write out my few goals or guidelines for this year, which is what I used the lined box for. If you notice, I tried to use my alphabet stamps for the title first, but I think my ink pad was a little bit dry, and I was just not feeling the unevenness of the stamped letters here, so I sneakily covered this up with an extra stripe of that same paper and used my trusty alphabet stickers instead. My reading goal is the same as it's been for the past 2 years, which is 20 books, and I'm determined to actually reach it this year. However, reading is one of those hobbies I don't want to attach too much pressure or stress to. So I'm not super strict about my reading goal, but I do have a lot of good books on my reading list that I'd like to get to. My second guideline is to mainly stick to standalones, duologies, and trilogies this year. I don't mind a longer series where the books can still be read separately, like some crime mystery ones. So if you have any recommendations, please keep those coming. And then my last point here is to not be afraid to DNF a book if it doesn't interest me, but it's not like I've had much of a problem with this in the past either. Then before we move on, I quickly wanted to add the yearly tabs to the side of the journal. So I used this pretty thick, almost cardboardy craft paper I have and cut out these small rectangles. I used the smallest side of my corner routing tool, and I think it adds a little bit more professional look to these tabs. I wrote the yearly numbers here and first attached the 2024 tab and the 2025 under it. I thought using double-sided tape was a better idea than just glue because I feel like the tape is stronger and these tabs need to really stick to the page to some extent. And I think with this placement, if I want to use my journal for a third year, I have room here to just add that third tab under these ones. So yeah, super simple but very helpful small addition. But I think that's finally all for this pretty simple cover spread, and now let's move on to the more exciting ones. So next we'll set up a year in book spread that I use to list the covers and ratings of all the books I read. I started by using this dark, wider washi tape from my own shop. When I was designing this tape, I was actually thinking of using it for exactly this spread in the future, so of course I had to go for it. I also added a few other decorations to the corners that matched the dark academia vibe, but eventually I needed almost the whole page to list the book covers, so I tried not to go overboard here. Then I used this regular brown craft paper to write this big 2025 in books title that will glue to the top. As I mentioned earlier, my goal is to read 20 books this year and I have room for 24 on this spread, so I think it should be fine. Also, if you read more than me, you could always add one extra Dutch door page in the middle here, where you cut the top and bottom edge and just leave the area for the book cover images. I think that will look really cool, and basically you can have room for as many books as you need. I'm currently reading the first book in the Flesh and Fire series, so I added the cover here to show you how I'll use this spread. If you're wondering how I make these book cover stickers, I included a detailed guide in my last year's reading journal setup video. I'll leave a link to that one in the description. I also got a question recently about the papers and tools I use to make the pictures in my journal. So I just use regular white matte sticker paper. Mine is from Online Labels, but there are other brands too. And I think one important point is to always use the highest quality settings when you print any pictures, which you can change in the printing settings. I have the Canon Pro 200S printer. It's mainly for my business purposes, but I'd say that a much cheaper printer would do the job just fine. But yeah, then I just cut the images out with scissors, so no need for a cutting machine or anything like that. I really hope that answered some of the questions you might have had, and if I didn't, just please leave your questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. But now that we are done with this yearly book page, let's move on to my 2025 to be read list. I wanted to change up the layout of this spread from my previous year's one and keep it a little bit more simple again. I was inspired by this layout picture I saw on Pinterest. I hope I can find the name of the creator while I edit this video. So we are starting by layering some papers and stickers here again. I usually have a few items I've decided to use on these pages. So here it would be this big rose sticker, and then just a bunch of extra stuff that I try and might not end up using. So building these layered scrapbook decorations actually takes a lot longer in real life as it seems in these videos, where I usually cut most of that thinking process. Anyway, this is maybe one of those pages that I wasn't super happy with. I was very indecisive with these decorations, and I feel like trying to keep things minimal made everything almost harder than easier for me, because it was very difficult to hit that perfect balance and choose the right decorations. But after setting up this spread, I tried not to stress about it as much with the upcoming pages, and I feel like it worked. Anyways, I did a similar TBR list last year where I divided the books by 3 categories. So first is romance, then we have thrillers and murder mysteries, and lastly this fantasy, sci-fi, other category where I can just put books that don't really fit into the other two. I know many of these books could be placed into multiple categories, so I just kind of divided them in a way that makes sense for me. I feel like I have a lot of books here. Quite a few are from last year that I never got to, but I would say that a pretty good amount of them are also new editions as well. So of course, this is a huge list and I know I won't get to all of these this year, but these are the ones that I'm the most excited about at the moment. If you've read any of these books or have them on your TBR as well, let me know. I always love to hear your guys' recommendations. I've found so many good books over the years because one of you recommended them. And I'm also listing all the recommendations on a specific recommendations shelf in my Goodreads profile. So if you want to see other people's recommendations too, you can check that out. But yeah, that's it for my book list of 2025. And now let's move on to some fun stuff. On this next spread, I wanted to switch up the style of the decorations slightly because I really wanted to use these Leela Journal's pet tapes that she so kindly sent to me recently. They're very light, sweet, and girly, which is maybe not a style that I go for most of the time, but I had so much fun trying to match these with a style that maybe I'm more familiar with, and I'm actually very happy how this spread turned out. So this will be my reading bingo and also my genre checklist, which is something I added this year. I think I've had a bingo like this for the past 2 years now, and I really enjoy using it. And as always, I made these available for you, so you're able to download and print both of these completely for free. I ended up using a lot of these rose and lily stickers on the background to create these almost vines peeking under the other decorations, and otherwise I used pretty minimal and light colored decorations here since the stickers are quite detailed. I also really like how these cursive titles went with the rest of the spread. I think this whole look was just very pretty and romantic. I already filled both the bingo and genre checklist with the first book I'm reading, so you'll see how I'm planning to use these. I have an unofficial rule for myself that I can cross a maximum of 2 bingo slots with one book and only one from the genre list. So I'm really excited to see how many I'll be able to cross this year. But I think that's all for this spread, and now let's continue to the last one before we can set up the first quarter cover spread. So here I went back to my more usual decoration style with these brownish vintage colors and decorations. I'm just gravitating for stuff like this, especially in my reading journal, because these colors and style remind me of books and old libraries. But anyway, on this spread, we will also start with something I didn't have before, and this will be my Book of the Year bracket. I've seen a lot of people including this in their reading journal setups, and I always thought it looked really fun, but I don't read enough books to have a big bracket where you start from the favorite book of each month, so I always thought that this was maybe a little bit pointless for me, but this time I decided to do it anyway, just for fun. So I'll start with my favorite book from each quarter of the year and then work my way to the favorite book of the year. I think this will be interesting, especially because I have very different style books on my TBR, so I can already see myself struggling with the decisions later in the year. Then I'll use this second page to list my monthly reading statistics, which I keep pretty simple. So I always write down how many books I read and did I not finish something. And then what I always find very interesting is the total page count and then what was my highest and average score. This year I also added this 20 book goal percentage that you can get from Goodreads. So again, I hope writing it down will give me a little bit of motivation in case I'm going through a reading slump or something. I used a lot of these alphabet and number stickers on this spread again because I just love how clean it makes everything look with very little effort. But of course, you could always write everything yourself or use stamps. So having these stickers is completely optional. But that's finally it for the last yearly spread, and now we can set up the first quarter cover. If you're new to my videos, I like to set up my reading journal quarterly instead of every month because I just don't read enough books to have a monthly setup. I feel like 3 months is a very forgiving time frame because there always seems to be at least 1 month in there that I get barely any reading done. So I can just accept that it's probably gonna happen and enjoy reading more when I have a little bit slower month going on. Also, I get a lot of comments from people wondering if they should start a reading journal if they don't necessarily read that much. And I would say that in my opinion, there's no minimum or maximum amount of books to have a reading journal. It's very flexible and you can make it very low maintenance for yourself. For example, if you know you're probably not gonna read much, maybe you can skip having any kind of monthly or quarterly cover altogether and just focus on simple note-focused book spreads. That's totally fine. And in the opposite case, if you read tens or hundreds of books per year, maybe you can only set up a page for the ones that really stood out for you. I feel like I have a very good system now with these quarterly reading journal videos that I post. So I sit down to film these videos every 3 months or so when I set up a book spread from a few books at a time. So I take notes while reading on my phone and then just transfer those to the journal later and find pictures and decorations that go with the book. So this works for me, and flipping through my old reading journals just makes me so happy. Anyway, I know I didn't really explain this spread here. So I again saw this scrapbooking page on Pinterest with a large image and this type of vellum paper over it. And I thought it looked so pretty. So I wanted to copy that idea and just change the other decorations a little bit. So I totally can't take any credit for this idea. Otherwise, again, we're trying to keep things simple. I used a few items from my own winter collection, but I'd say that the main focus here is on these few wintry pictures. Then when it comes to the books I listed here as my inspiration, I of course started with the Flesh and Fire series that I'm already reading. I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna read the whole series. I usually get a little bit bored with this romantasy series after the first or second book, and usually they are not that groundbreaking in the world or plot aspect that I feel like I have to keep reading to know what's gonna happen. So after I'm done with this series, I really want to read at least one mystery, and The Frozen River and God of the Woods both sound very interesting to me. I believe God of the Woods won the Goodreads award for the best mystery last year, so I kind of want to see what's up with that. Then I definitely want to start the Mistborn saga this spring. This is a widely loved fantasy trilogy. I've been recommended this time and time again, and I actually started to read this earlier, but then something came over me last year and I really wanted to start the Throne of Glass series instead. But even the beginning of this series seemed super promising. Then I listed a few other standalones that I'm most likely not gonna get to, but I just wanted to have them here as some variety if I'm in the mood. So these are For Her Consideration, which is a fun contemporary rom-com, then Billy Summers by Stephen King, and Blood Over Pride Haven, which is a fantasy standalone that I definitely want to read this year. So yeah, those are my plans for the first quarter of the year. As always, I really want to hear if you have any thoughts about these books, or if you have something you read recently that you really want to recommend or not recommend. I love reading your comments in these videos, so please keep them coming. But I think that's it for my 2025 reading journal setup. I'm actually very happy with how this turned out, and it makes me so excited to read and use all these pages. I hope you got some new ideas or inspiration, and if this was your first time around here and you'd like to stay tuned for more, please consider subscribing. But I guess that's it for this time. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!